Hello everyone. In this video we are going to talk about the 1984 candidates matchup between Vasily Smyslov and Gary Kasparov, who was at the time 21 years old, and he was playing against the 62-year-old Vasily Smyslov. And we're going to be starting at game three. The first two games were drawn. The first game being Slav. In the second game, Gary Kasparov had the black pieces and played the Tarish, which he was playing through the candidate cycle at the time. Now, let me just give you a bit of background on Smyslov. Now, like I said, he was 62 years old at the time, so he had been around for a while. He was born in 1921 and he passed away in 2010. His first Soviet championship took place in 1940. He drew in his challenge against Botvinnik for the world title in 1954. He came back 3 years later in the next cycle and won the title in 1957. So that made him the seventh world chess champion, official crowned world chess champion. And then he lost in the rematch because Botvinnik loved those rematch clauses. Lost in the rematch the next year in 1958. After that, Smyslov did not really qualify or reach those top echelon levels. Although throughout the 1960s, he always remained in the top 5 or 10 in the chess world. But remember, around after 1958, there was already a new star on the horizon, and that would be that player Tao. So Tao kind of took over after 1960, won the title, then lost to Botvinnik in 61 in another rematch situation, and then comes the era of Petrosian, and then after that Spassky. So Smyslov kind of faded to the background, although he would participate, at a high level for the rest of his career. Now, let me tell you how Smyslov came to this point in the candidates. Um, this match came as a result of the 1982 candidates cycle, and so there were three interzonal tournaments, and the top two players of each tournament will qualify and play in the candidates match. So, in Moscow, in that tournament, excuse me, you had the qualifiers were Kasparov and Belyavsky. In the Las Palmas tournament, the two qualifiers were Smyslov and Zoltan Ribley. And then the Toulouse tournament, you had Leos Portish and Torre. So Kasparov and Belyavsky played in their quarterfinals match. Um, Vasily Smyslov played Robert Hubner actually in his first match. And the interesting story behind that is that they were both tied. They tied all their games, and then they played four tiebreak games, after which they were still tied. So um, the idea was proposed that the winner be decided by the turn of the roulette wheel, and uh, against Hubner's objection, this took place, and the first turn actually came up 0, so it was still tied. And then finally, um, Smyslov won when it landed on the ball landed on red, and so I think that was like an interesting point in chess history, and what a way to lose in such an important match for Hubner. Hubner had already left this when they decided on deciding the title this in this manner anyway as a protest. So he didn't even stick around to see if he would uh, win or draw. Um, so another interesting point about this time period also is that um, Kasparov can consider himself lucky to even be at this point. Um, Kasparov, in order to play Smyslov, he had to defeat Belyavsky, which he did. That's another candidates match I'll be looking at in the future. And then after that, he played Viktor Korchnoi, who was still very strong. He was the strongest player outside of Russia at the time, still. And Korchnoi had defected from the Soviet Union in 1976. And so the match between Kasparov and Korchnoi was to be held in the United States. But due to all types of red tape and politics dealing with Korchnoi being a defector, Kasparov was not allowed to play in the United States at the time. Therefore, Kasparov actually had to forfeit the match, leaving Korchnoi the winner. But Korchnoi agreed to play in England, and this match was organized by Ray Keane. So the match actually did happen, and Gary defeated Korchnoi. So that's an interesting scenario that took place that you can wonder like what would have happened if Kasparov would not have played. You probably would have wound up with Karpov holding the title for another 3 years. So instead of Kasparov becoming the champion, 85, you probably have Karpov holding on to the title after another probably Korchnoi Karpov match. So that was very interesting. So now that we have that stuff out the way, thanks for bearing with me. Um, let's look at game three. So here in game three, Kasparov has the white pieces. Again, he's 21 years old, fresh spring chicken, versus the experienced, extremely experienced, but older Vasily Smyslov at the time. So Kasparov with white played d4, Smyslov d5, knight f3, knight f6, c4. Here's the Slav, knight c3, and e6. So now we have a semi-Slav. And let's see what happens after here. So bishop g5, knight bd7. And just note that very sharp variations can take place. These so-called Botvinnik variation. After either e3, move like e4, b5, e5, h6, and I won't go into all the rest. Of course, you can look all of this up. Bishop h4, g5, and it gets very sharp. Knight takes g5, and this variation was very popular in the 90s. Players like Shirov, Ivanchuk, Kramnik, all these guys were playing this stuff in the 90s. So play could get very sharp, but black doesn't have to go into that, right, for the price of a pawn. Sometimes black just simply plays h6 here, and then white takes. And games are still a little bit quieter. Another way, and this is one of the favorite ways that Grandmaster Alexei Dreyev approaches the position, is he plays knight bd7. And after e3, queen a5, and this transposes into, guess what? Cambridge Springs defense. Cambridge Springs defense is extremely solid, but known to, give you a cramped position if you're playing the black pieces. Alright, so again, if you look at the match strategy or psychology of the players, is Smyslov, he knows that he's facing a young player, young aggressive attacking player. Kasparov was already known at this time for his brilliant attacking prowess, and so he's playing something to slow him down a bit. Okay, and it's not like this type of player is new to Smyslov. I mean, he's played with aggressive players before, likes of Tal and things like that. So he's playing in a way he's willing to take a cramped position, maybe drag Kasparov like deep into the ending, something like that, and possibly get the young guy to overextend himself a little bit. C takes d4, d5, knight takes d5, queen d2. This is all typical Cambridge Springs stuff, putting a lot of pressure on the c3 point, and sometimes white even just gives up the a pawn, right? And of course there's compensation because black takes all his time to win the pawn, and white usually gets a nice Um, nice lead in development. Plus, he has a mobile pawn center. Rook c1, castles, bishop d3, and now Smyslov plays e5, castles, e takes d4, e takes d4. Now let's move f6, which it drives away the bishop, and also in the future it keeps the pieces out of the e5 square. Of course, there's always like a deficit, which is in this case you're weakening the king side a little bit and opening up the a2 g8 diagonal for the white pieces in the future. So bishop h4. Now rook d8. Kasparov plays a3, so he wants to resolve the situation. Um, this move is good. Also, just simply queen c2, whereby it becomes problematic as far as trying to protect this pawn right here on h7. For example, this is like the most natural move in the position. Knight f8. After knight f8, yeah, this move, bishop g3. Excuse me, bishop e6, for example. Knight e4. Let's say knight g6. a3. Bishop f8. Knight c5. And you see the black position coming under pressure just because of the activity of the white pieces. So, for instance, with this knight on c5 and these threats to, for instance, b7, e6, this almost forces black's hand to give up the bishop pair. That is, d takes c5, and let's say after bishop f7, rook e1 here. And so black is still in the game, but the problem here now is this strong point that has been produced now at d6. And so it's little problems like that which give white the persistent edge in a position. Then it becomes difficult to move this piece because again the h7 square is on in danger. That's just a little sample to show that yes, black's pawn structure is solid. There's no doubt about that. But the cramped nature of the position is what gives black difficulty in a lot of these lines. So Kasparov just plays a3. Bishop takes. B takes. So he gains a bishop pair here. Knight f8. Oh, Smyslov is basically just protecting, playing some defensive chess here. The f6 square is not available for the knight, so he puts the knight on f8, guards h7, bishop g3, and now white is looking for a good time to mobilize his pawns on the C and D files. He wants to play c4, right? Kick that knight out of there and drive the black pieces back. So bishop e6, rook fe1. Notice too how Kasparov is not worried about this a3 pawn. Bishop f7, and Smyslov leaves it also. He might have been able to take here, but again, it's not whether he can take or not. It's how much compensation does white have, because white definitely has compensation. So after queen takes a3, c4 for example, and let's say knight b4, right, attacking the bishop. Bishop e4, and black is in a little trouble here because the position of his queen on a3 and knight on b4 are just asking for trouble. Like, let's say, for example, a5, for example. Then you got rook a1, queen b3, rook ec1, and already the queen is almost about to be trapped here. So Smyslov opts for bishop f7, trying to keep a firm, solid defensive position, right, without overextending. So he's looking at the pawns, but his logic is, hey, these pawns are weak. I'll deal with that later, but first let me make sure I'm not getting checkmated or allowing my opponent to develop a big initiative. c4. Kasparov goes into the ending. So Smyslov is happy with this. Knight b6. Knight b3. And knight a4. Bishop f1. And now let me just state that white has a small advantage. He doesn't have any big advantage. So this is what Smyslov wants. But white does have a small but persistent advantage, which consists of one, the bishop pair, which very strong in these type of positions, and two is his advantage in the center, right, which consists of a space and a solid pawn duo, which restricts the movement of the black pieces. Furthermore, white's pieces are better placed than black's pieces. Black's pieces look a little discombobulated. Okay, the knight on a4 looks a little suspicious. Bishop on f7 and the knight on f8, or kind of in like low-ranking defensive positions, so to speak. Whereas white's pieces look a little bit more natural, and the it's easy for him to basically jump into action quicker, as you're going to see here. Kasparov, after rook d7 from Smyslov, of course he wants to guard his 7th rank from invasion. Knight a5. All right. So after knight a5, knight e6, just double attack on the pawn. Now rook d4 is possible, but then you enter in some complications with Kasparov after knight takes b7. And to me, it seems like Smyslov was trying to avoid these complications, maybe a little too much. So knight e6, he just attacks the d pawn again. And now Kasparov plays d5 again. He's trying to spice up the position. Knight d4. The idea here is if c takes d5, c takes d5, rook takes d5, and again you have this knight takes b7 at the end. Again, favoring the two bishops. Knight d4 from Smyslov. D takes, and now knight c6. So see how Smyslov is trying to keep the position like solid, right? Everything's symmetrical. B takes c6, c5, and now here's the position that I showed you earlier in the variation. If we go back to move 14, I was showing you this position right here, where the bishop is on d6 after c5 has been played. And now we see an analogous position after knight takes c6, knight takes c6, b takes c6, c5, with the same idea of the bishop going to d6. Rook e8, rook takes, bishop takes e8, and now bishop d6. And again, here we can see white is better because the pieces, the black pieces stand bad here. Um, Namely the rook on d7 and a knight on a4. Not good pieces, and this position favors the bishop pair tremendously. Bishop f7, so taking over that diagonal. Now rook b1. Okay, so Kasparov just keeps his pieces better than the opponent's pieces. Like I said, that's one of the big advantages in this position for Kasparov. His pieces are better, and the space, and also the occupation of the weak squares in the black position, namely c5 and d6. Those are big liabilities to black right now. Okay, there's all kind of and the occupation of the b file. What can Smyslov do? Smyslov plays bishop d5, right? So he's trying to make his bishop shine like white's bishop is shining right now. The only thing is Smyslov's bishop is not on Kasparov's third rank, which would be the equivalent. But right now, that bishop on d5 is Smyslov's best piece. So rook b8 happened. King f7. Rook f8 check. King gets flushed out, gets evicted. King e6. And now Kasparov played g3 with a good thought in mind, but he missed the basically a winning move here. Just simply bishop a6 with the idea of, just come in here and ending the game. So now, of course, the first question we have to ask ourselves is, if bishop a6, how and can black defend against this? Like, so for example, if he tries to, I'll make like a silly move. If he tries to get desperate and trade rooks, okay, that loses quickly. Bishop c8, and it's going to be checkmate on the board, so yeah, you only can sacrifice your rook there. And this is going to win. Again, there's only silly defenses here. For instance, knight b6, guarding the c8 square. You can simply just take here, and so now you might say, hey, just grab this grab this piece. The problem with that is, say you take king takes d6, then just b7 wins, because how are you going to stop the queen from happening? So bishop a6, let it be known from this day forward, the win's right on the spot. Instead, Kasparov played g3, which has an analogous idea. Okay, it has the threat, of course, of playing bishop h3, right? Because after f5, after all, can't you just take? But at the g6, this gives some breathing room. So g6 is played, and now Kasparov finds the move on the next shot. So he played g3. It wasn't necessary. I mean, he created a threat, but instead of g6 being played, perhaps Smyslov could have tried to bail out quicker with rook f7. But then, of course, you're still going to meet, a brutal end at the f5. Rook takes, king takes. But at least you're just down pawns and not, the whole exchange. But after g6, it gave of course, Smyslov's idea is after bishop h3 question mark, then just f5, just blocking everything off. So bishop a6. So he obviously didn't see this backdoor attack. So rook d6 gives up the exchange. C takes, king takes, And then it's just light work after this for Kasparov. King e5, rook f8, c5, rook e8 check, king d4, rook d8, going for the pin him and win him. So king e5, f4, king e4, bishop f1, again going for the skewer now on g2, bishop b3, king f2, knight bd2, knight b2, and Smyslov resigned. So this gave Kasparov, the young Kasparov, a 1-0 advantage in the match. So next video, we're going to be going and looking at the next game. And so again, if you have trouble finding any of my videos, just click on the videos and then go to playlists, because they'll be, all in order, chronological order as the games happened. And so I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you in the next video. Devastating game by Kasparov, by the way. Nice squeeze positionally. Smyslov played a little too passive here and gave up, a good position. This position right here is basically strategically lost for all intents and purposes. Two bishops, space, open lines is too much. Okay, I'll see you in the next video.